Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast, where we talk about all of the essence and elements of leadership to help you be the best version of you. Today we're going to dive into a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. If you've known me for more than about 15 minutes, you know I love to talk about all those icky things like fear and insecurities. So we're going to dive into a topic like that today. Leadership makes us sometimes feel insecure. The whole reason why I decided to do this podcast and jump off the edge of this cliff was because I believe that leaders are entrusted with the care and safekeeping of others. And that is such an important thing. As I look across the landscape today in business and in the marketplace and through the church, I see this gap. We as people are struggling to really embrace and become the people that God has called us to be. And all the while, you have people navigating toxic workspaces and unhealthy cultures. And I believe it's our responsibility to make a change. So we're going to dive into what keeps us from being the best version of ourselves. We're going to talk today about mindset and culture and identity. So I'm excited to join you. Let's get started. Doing things alone is entirely overrated. We all need a community to thrive. And that's why I'm part of an online community of writers and speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneurs called Creatives. And I love it. In the years since I joined this community, I've launched new ideas and I finally executed the dreams that sat on the shelf for years. Seriously. And I was able to do this because of the outstanding group of mentors, exceptional training, and encouraging mastermind groups with my new friends who did and continue to give me invaluable feedback. Oh, and not to mention all the fun, because we have had lots and lots of fun. Have you ever said, I want to write a book? Or do you want to use your voice for the exciting world of podcasting? If so, Called Creatives is your best resource for up-to-the-minute industry training, expert advice, live coaching, and peer support like no other. Best-selling authors and speakers Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle lead this community with a no-competition mission, and it shows. So join my friends and I in the Called Creative community. Head to my show notes, danitacummins.com/podcast, and click the link to get all the details to join. I promise you won't regret it. I look forward to seeing you in the community and watching you grow. Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Danita Cummins. On today's episode, we're diving headlong into a discovery journey to answer the question, why does this concept of being a leader at times make us feel so uncomfortable? I don't know about you, but for me, the thought or action of calling myself a leader causes a great degree of insecurity and doubt. Over the years, I've had to redefine my understanding and my perceptions of leadership. So I'm excited to join you today as we uncover some of the myths of leadership and we replace them with a newfound confidence to lead ourselves and others well. So let's get started. How would you define leadership? If I do a quick Google search for the word leadership, it generates about 5 billion results. Man, that's a lot of data. But it's okay. I'll summarize for you. At its core, leadership is the process of how we lead, guide, or influence others for the accomplishment of a shared goal. That could be individuals or teams or organizations or your community. So if you think about leadership in that context, then we do it or we're a part of doing it every single day at work, in our communities, and definitely in our families. We are leading others, or at least we're trying to get everyone on the same page every day. I'm sure that if you're a parent, you've probably led a small army of children through bed and bath time at least 100 times. And that makes you, my friend, a leader. But I believe this level of uncertainty and insecurity, it stems from a much deeper place. So here's my question for you. If leadership is such a core element of our life and so common, why do we find the concept contested or confused? What is it that makes us feel uncomfortable or insecure about leadership? I think it's 3 things: our mindset, our culture, and our identity. In 2005, authors Hannah Bowles and Kathleen McGinn at Harvard University wrote an article called Claiming Authority: Negotiating Challenges for Women Leaders. In this article, they talked about the different styles of leaderships as displayed by men and women. And they proposed that the reason for a gender gap in leadership was not about leading per se, but rather it was a person's ability or their desire to claim a position of authority. Now, I'm not specifically interested in the gender debate today, but I am interested in our perception of the elements of leadership and why we shy away from claiming a position of authority. So hold on to that. We'll come back to it. What qualities do you think good leaders should display? Is it confidence? Do we see leaders as those who are direct or commanding and leading with force or energy as good, versus those who are maybe passive or timid or reserved as less effective? In my experiences, especially in the military, I've witnessed how those dominating traits were sometimes encouraged. But the greatest leaders that I met and served with were those who were quiet and reserved and calm. They took the time to know each person's name. They listened intently, and then they asked lots of questions. They carried around little coffee cups with mustaches on them, and they considered the opinions and expertise of others. They made a point to include everyone at the table, especially that person who didn't say anything during the meeting. And over time, I began to see that my perceptions of what made a great leader might have been misguided. I needed to change my mindset. Friend, your mindset is your most important asset, okay? So the first question to ask yourself is, what do you believe about leadership? Do you believe that some people are just born natural leaders? Or do you believe that anyone, regardless of their background or personality or skills, can lead themselves and others well? This all comes down, I think, to your mindset. Is it fixed or does it grow as you grow? This idea of a fixed and growth mindset was introduced almost 30 years ago by Carol Dweck, a Stanford University professor. Her work formed a bridge between developmental, social, and personality psychology. A fixed mindset leads a person to believe that their abilities can't change. It implies that we're born with all that we have, and that's all we're ever going to get. And as a result, we approach everything in our life so we look smarter, or we avoid challenges or negative criticism. It's hard for us as leaders to leave our comfort zone if we're consumed by a fixed mindset. The alternative is developing a growth mindset, one where you believe your talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others. You focus more on the learning journey than on how you personally might look. Leaders who carry a growth mindset are oriented towards self-improvement, and they treat the obstacles and setbacks as opportunities for growth rather than signs that you or your team are inadequate. How many of us have worked for a leader that invariably complained or criticized when we made a mistake or we failed? We call that psychological safety. And in the leadership circles, we have to create a space where people trust us and where they're safe. They feel vulnerable. They can let their guard down. And in those places, they grow and thrive. So one of the greatest factors to how we see or understand the role of leadership is our mindset. If we believe that being a good leader only looks like that person who's boisterous or direct or charismatic, then what does that say about the rest of those people who maybe are more quiet, reserved, and less interested in being in the front of the room? So consider that. If you believe a leader should be those things, then why would we step into that role? Why would we embrace the authority of leadership if it looks different than how we naturally behave or believe? The second issue that creates a negative feeling about leadership is culture. Now, if we take a look at our political, religious, or business landscapes today, what are a few words that come to mind to describe the leaders that you see? Are they trustworthy? Do they promote honor, loyalty, and encourage? Do they protect others through words or actions? Do they give life? Or do they seem to be guided by their own self-interests? Culture shapes leaders, and it comes in many forms. Culture is influenced by language and race, geography, demographics, and our economic status. It is. And these factors shape where we derive our identity, our limitations, our expectations, and our behaviors. Culture is the deepest part of community expectations, and it guides how we relate to each other as people and as leaders. Therefore, culture is integrated into your life. If you put it another way, culture is a mental program that's shared by the people who live in the same environment. This means that culture is not an individual characteristic, but it's something that commonly is programmed in people who have the same education and life experiences. That's why it's so important for us as leaders to move outside that sphere, to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to have empathy, to understand that our own biases and judgments guide and direct the way we make decisions, how we relate to other people. It is the culture that we have been taught in, we have been led in, we have grown up in, that makes us or shapes us into the people that God has called us to be. One of my most favorite leadership concepts is this relationship between authority and influence. I say that a lot, all the time. Is this authority or influence? Which position? What are we leveraging today? And there's a lot of talk about influencers. We see it on social media or the press, and podcasters and YouTubers. Their vocation is influence. People do it as a profession. But the concept is nothing new. In 1936, Kurt Lewin published a psychology formula to explain what determines behavior. He said that the behavior, B, of a person equals the function, F, of the person plus their environment. Through this lens, I have witnessed several times how my own behavior was driven by the specific environment at the time. It wasn't always a behavior that I appreciated or that I was very proud of, if I'm being honest. But I learned through reflection how we can use every single moment to shape us into the person that God is calling us to be. Perception is a real thing. Of course, we all judge others. But if we can pull back the layer of judgment for a moment and look inside through the lens of leadership, like placing ourselves under a microscope, what would we see? Maybe it's a perception or fear of manipulation, fear of failure. Maybe it's pride or selfishness. Maybe we have a disproportionate view of what it means to be a leader. And if all of this is going on underneath the surface, then it's easy for me to understand why we don't claim the authority to lead. If all of this is going on underneath the surface, then it helps me better understand why we don't claim the authority to lead. As leaders, we're entrusted with the care and safekeeping of others. But how we see ourselves and our ability to serve or lead is a powerful indicator of our impact. You have been entrusted to lead right where you are. And inside each of us is a desire to make the best of our life. Call it legacy or responsibility, but it wells up inside each one of us. And we balance this desire between two camps, self-promotion and servanthood, as author Joseph Stowell explains in his book, Redefining Leadership. Now, friend, I know sometimes we talk about being broken. Sometimes we talk about how the world tells us to be a certain thing. But how do you develop the confidence to lean into your leadership calling and still demonstrate and truly have a heart of humility, empathy, and courage? I think this is an important reminder today that God cares more about your character than He will ever care about your accomplishments. In my leadership journey and in every role, I've often prayed for the wisdom to build as God would have me build. But over the years, I've learned that more often than not, I am always guided by my own emotions, my fears, and responding. During a leader's lifetime, God will use every element of their story to shape them into the person that He designed them to be. You will question your experiences and try to determine the value of each moment. We don't often understand the ways of God or how our use of culture and identity and mindset shape us. So how do we do this? How do we do this thing called leadership well? And how do we take a step back and say, even despite how yucky it looks, how insecure or crazy it makes us feel, how do we lead well? We'll take a little chapter from Joseph Stowell's book. He says that there are two considerations when you want to examine the concept of taking leadership personally so that you can have a lasting impact. First, you must consider how you're going to lead. It sounds pretty simple, really. You're like, okay, yeah, I probably should have thought of that. But the reality is, how often do we do that? How often do you sit down as a leader in your organization, with your family, with your teams, and then say, how do I want to lead? And second, you must examine who are you going to be like as you lead. Again, when we look at the world and we look at society and our culture and our own mindset and identity, we have all these factors and all of these perceptions of what a leader should and shouldn't be and do and say. And all of that shapes our opinions and our perspectives and our biases. And it encourages or it discourages us from standing and taking authority and leading from a place of strength and courage. And so, one, consider how you will lead. And two, who will you lead like? So that you can create a lasting leadership foundation. How you build your organizations and your communities matter. Great and trusted leaders are those who have chosen to lead from the heart side out. Man, that's a powerful statement. At the core, leadership is about the care and safekeeping of others, not just simply the accomplishment of goals. It's a delicate balance to align people with specific skills and abilities, to help them overcome their challenges and biases and weaknesses in order for the greater community, team, or organization to thrive. You have to strive to create a continuous learning environment for yourself and your teams. And that is quite simply somewhat of a daunting task, if I'm being honest. But if we as leaders lose sight of the core foundational elements of leadership, then we miss out on the very joy and impact that it provides. For me, there is a great comfort and strength in knowing that God has managed my journey and that He continues to allow me and shape me to be a leader. That concept, in recent years, I've learned to see much more clearly in my everyday leadership journey. We speak about the hand of God crafting our steps, but do you also see how God's hand is intimately guiding your leadership journey? Today, friend, I leave you with this question. Your homework is to ask yourself, am I a leader? Do I think so? And if so, have you fully committed to the authority that you have been given? If not, why? Are there ways that you can begin to do that today? I believe that the answer is a resounding yes. So how do you change your mindset to understand that leadership is a calling, not a condition of employment or vocational placement? And how do you embrace the calling to lead yourself and others well? Remember, friend, you are entrusted with the care and safekeeping of others, and leadership starts with you. So keep showing up every day, even when it hurts, because you matter. Have an amazing day. I'll see you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. This podcast was brought to you by our amazing producers at Wildfire Creative Company. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please hop over to iTunes or Spotify, subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And make sure you come back. We'll talk more about the essence and elements of leadership on the first and third Thursday of every month. If you enjoyed today's show, you can head over to danitacummins.com/podcast and gain access to additional free resources. But make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you can stay up to date on the latest shows. Have an amazing day. Talk to you soon.